Adaaaaaaa, how's it going, guys? Hope you're doing good on this Thursday morning. As always, it is I, your host, Jean-Paul Leek, here to bring you your AEW Dynamite review. And overall, this was a pretty good show. It didn't do anything really spectacular. There was no, besides the main event, one match that like really stood out. That was, like a show stealer. Um, but, it was a good, solid Dynamite. They announced a lot of new things, continued some feuds and storylines. So let's get right into it. The show started out, Jon Moxley, he had a match against Alex Reynolds, and that went about as long as you would think it was. 8 seconds, hit, paradigm shift, done. And then after the match, his Alex Reynolds' partner, John Silver, attacked Moxley. He eats a paradigm shift as well. And then that was just to set up the inner circle comes out. So Jericho, is proud and powerful. Sammy, Hager, they all come out. They surround the ring. Jericho gets into the ring. And then he says, the inner circle is impressed with him, everything he's done. And he's like, we all know, and you and I know we have a long history together. And he says how he remembers when Moxley first came to the WWE. They didn't say WWE by name, but when they first all came there, or when Moxley first came there, he said how I remember you with the bowl cut and the leather jacket, and you asked me how to get over and for advice and all this, and he's like, I pretty much am the one who I navigated you through that, and I helped you get out. And he was the first person. He went on Jericho's podcast as soon as he got his release, and he pretty much, said everything about Vince McMahon and WWE. He got it all out there. So, Jericho helped him there. He helped him as soon as he got out, and he said, I navigated you to AEW. I navigated you through those through the rocks, through the forest, and all that. So he said, he's the one. So Moxley laid him out, he's like, and to repay me, you laid me out at Double or Nothing. And he's like, I respect that, because that just shows that you still have the passion, you still have the drive. And, then Jericho asks him if he's ever thought about teaming up with him and joining the inner circle. Moxley's kind of looking around, he was just, while Jericho was saying all this, Moxley was just standing there, just taking it all in. He was just kind of, but Jericho was like standoffish a little bit. It was almost like he was talking to, like, I think the commentary pretty much said like a giant grizzly bear. Like, you don't want to, piss him off. You don't want to say the wrong thing, get too close, move too quick or whatever. So he had an inner circle shirt, and he like slowly reaches and puts that on Moxley's shoulder. So he's like, if you ever thought about teaming up with us, all the things we could accomplish, he pretty much, goes over the credentials of everyone in the group. And he's like, I want you to think long and hard about it, choose wisely, and the inner circle will be waiting. And of course, the crowd's just chanting, no, no, no. And Jericho's telling them to shut up, don't listen to these loser hicks. And they were in Texas, so it was a good first opening segment. Obviously, Alex Reynolds and John Silver, unfortunately, they're just jobbers right now. Someone obviously has to fill that role, unfortunately. But, it makes Moxley look good. Just beat down two guys immediately. And then this is a good, interesting storyline, because we've seen these guys work so much together in WWE, and we've seen, all that stuff. It's like, what can they really do different besides just their characters are different? Like, in the ring, what can they really do different? But this is a good added twist to the story. I didn't think that they would go here. Obviously, I don't think Moxley's going to team up with them, or if he does, it'll just be so he can take them all down, because he obviously can't take on, 5-on-1. But it was definitely a good first opening segment to the episode. Then next we get a highlight package for the main event between the Young Bucks and Proud and Powerful. And Excalibur was mostly narrating this, and he said how he's been calling the Young Bucks for 14 years. And the first thing I thought is, if you're calling a team for 14 years and you still can't get the name of some moves right, hey. But I don't want to shit on him too much. I'm not perfect either, but I've only, been a hardcore fan for the 2-3 years, so I think I'd get a little more slack than he does. And he was definitely sucking the Young Bucks' ass in this whole thing, which that's one thing that also bothers me about the commentary is like they're all face. There's no real heel. Like nobody's really siding with the heels. They kind of side with Jericho if he makes a good point or MJF, but like nobody's just a full-blown supporter of the heels, and I think that's still really hurting the commentary team. And also one thing to mention before I get to the next segment is they had sound issues again, but it didn't last as long. It was only maybe for this first segment. I believe after this video package it was good. But so again, they're still having minor technical issues with the sound and stuff, and just I guess I'll mention it now quick too, because it was just kind of through every match. The commentary team seemed like this was kind of like an off week. Not that like they got were calling things wrong or whatever. It just seemed like Jim Ross just seemed like he didn't want to be there. Like he was calling some stuff good, and then like especially the women's match he didn't care about. And there was one match where he's like, "Oh, the Butcher and the Blade, the next match coming up." He's like, "Oh, I don't even know these guys' names, but I'm impressed with them. I can't tell them apart." And it's like, dude, like come on, like it just seems. And he's also referenced his New Japan work, and I've heard all of his work in New Japan was awful. And if he's bringing up that, saying like that was one of his best matches he's called, clearly he's going senile. I don't want to shit on JR because I love him. We all love him. He's was a great announcer. Now I'm gonna be honest, not so much. So I just felt the whole commentary team was kind of off tonight. But so like I said, then we get highlights for the main event. And then we get the Butcher and the Blade versus Cody and QT Marshall. And they said that I guess MJF hired the Butcher and the Blade. And I don't know if that means he hired Allie as well, or if she just decided. Like, I don't know that whole story. That still wasn't explained. But MJF hired them. And he said so he was the one who technically chose Cody's partner. So then going through some early spots in this match, Cody hits a snap power slam on the Blade, and actually one of our biggest supporters, Tom, shout out to our boy Tom, he knows the Blade, so that's pretty cool. I don't know how, I forget how he knows him. Juan told me, so that's my bad, but I know he does know him, so that's awesome. And I do like that mask he wears. He takes it off when he wrestles. I think that'd be cool if he could leave it on, but it's probably hard to see and all that. I think it only has the one eye open, but it's a badass looking mask. I really like it. So he hits the snap power slam on the Blade for a 1 count. Marshall is tagged in, and then at some point he hits the ropes. Ali grabs his leg. Marshall goes out to confront her, and then the Blade tags in and jumps on him. And then this leads to the commercial break, and then during the commercial break, they work over QT Marshall, isolating him in the corner. And then Marshall hits an enziguri, and he tries to tag in on the Blade, and then he tries to tag into Cody. But then the Butcher, he runs over, knocks Cody off the apron. Then they isolate Marshall again, start beating him down. He hits another enziguri, and then he was able to tag in Cody. Cody hits a disaster kick on the Butcher, high cross body for a 2 count, and then a cutter from the top rope for a 2 count. So like during this whole like Cody comeback, I thought there was a couple of spots where he was gonna get the pin, but I'm thinking there's no way you make these guys lose in their first, their debut match. So then after he hits the cutter from the top rope, he goes over to the ropes, and the bunny reaches up and starts like gouging and giving him an eye rake. And then QT is able to tag in, since Cody's he's all blind and he can't really see. So QT actually takes out both men, and this is where I was like, okay, really? Like, this guy's supposed to be a jobber. I know he's like the underdog, and like it is kind of funny to see it, but I feel QT Marshall especially got a little too much offense in this match, especially against this debuting team that you want to seem super legit and get them over. So QT tags in, takes out both men. He hits a top rope dive that he barely hit. I mean, he hit from like here up on him, and they were like, oh, I don't even know. I think they might have said he didn't get all that, but they kind of like, when stuff like that happens, they brush it over certain times, and I wish they would sell it, because clearly that wasn't going to be the pin. So it's like, oh, I don't think he got out of that, and then that's why he kicked out. You kind of protected a little bit. But anyway, so Cody gets taken out, and then the Butcher and the Blade work over QT some more, and then they hit their finisher on him. It looked kind of like a suplex lung blower, I think, from what I saw. He like picked him up and took him backwards, and then the other one hit like a lung blower on the back. So it's a cool looking finisher. I definitely hope they come up with a name with it. I like when they name the finishers and stuff, but um pretty decent match. Like I said, my only problem is I was fine with all the offense Cody got. Cody needs to look good, look legit. But I think QT got a little too much offense, and I mean there wasn't like any super near falls on the on the Butcher and the Blade, so it wasn't like it was like they almost lost or anything. They still looked pretty good, but I would have liked to see them look a little more dominant, especially because Cody's partner was picked for him to be at a huge disadvantage, and they almost could have won the thing. So that was really my only gripe, but I'm really glad to see, the Butcher and the Blade and the Bunny, Allie's new heel gimmick I really like. And, I'm really excited to see more from the Butcher and the Blade. And like I said, one of our hugest supporters, Tom, he knows the Blade, so that's badass. And then we get, after the match, Darby Allin comes out, and he goes up to Cody, and he kind of like the Butcher and the Blade and the Bunny were on the ramp. They, had their arms up celebrating the win. He just like walks by and just like almost like shoulder checks the one as he like walks by, and I'm like I feel like they should have grabbed him and like started beating his ass on the ground, but obviously that wasn't for storyline purpose. So he just walks down there, and he extends his hand out to Cody, and to be like, I'll help you, because the commentary was trying to sell that Cody had no friends in the previous week, how he said like, all of his friends from the Elite and, his brother are feuding with the Inner Circle and all this other stuff, and his wife's going on some crazy tirade, cutting off people's hair. So he says he feels like he has no one, which, I mean, you just had QT Marshall in this match, and just because your brother's feuding with Jake Hager broke his arm, you would assume he's going to feud with him. He doesn't need to be holding your hand all the time, Cody. So I didn't get the whole I don't have any friends thing, but it's cool that they're doing something with Darby Allin, because there's so many feuds, and I feel like at this point AEW doesn't want to overload, or maybe they don't feel the need to have as many storylines going on. So this is a way to get Darby Allin involved in a storyline, because he's definitely very over. So then, probably one of the best segments of the night, MJF comes out, and he calls out some camera guy for laughing at what Cody said last week. That's one of the first things he says. He gets in the ring. He's like, hey, you look familiar. So he calls this guy in, and he's like, you laughing because, everybody said, or Cody said that I do like the shittiest Crossroads ever. And he said that this guy needs to kiss his ring. And I believe the guy did kiss the ring. I was taking notes, and Jim Ross said something like, oh, that's disgusting or something. So I assume he kisses the ring, and then he hits a Crossroads on him anyway. So, and MJF did, he came out with Wardlow, but he hits a Crossroads on this guy. Then he calls out Cody, and he says that, he doesn't want your money, and he doesn't want, all the things that you offered him. And he said the only thing he wants is for Cody to suffer. And he said the thing that Cody said, that pissed him off was that line that he said about comparing to Jericho. And he's like, my scarf's not fake. And he said, but Cody, he's the one who is fake. From his hair, from his beaver buck teeth. I guess he got teeth fixed because his teeth don't look too big, so they must have been huge at some point. And he said what also is fake is his love for the fans. And he's like, but his lisp, that's for real. So that was pretty, like MJF. I mean, obviously I'm just paraphrasing it here. Just like if you can find this promo online, you got to, do yourself a service and watch it. It was so funny. He just completely cuts him up. And MJF, like, he's not the biggest guy, he's not, like, huge muscular-wise, but, like, he's just so good on the mic, and he's definitely one of the brightest stars in AEW. So, then he said, why doesn't he get Tony Khan to just fire him? Like, he's talking about Cody, like, because Cody, he's, the big wig in AEW, best friends with Tony Khan. He's like, why don't you just get him to fire me? And he's like, it's because what Cody wants the most is to fight him. And MJF said he's on. He just, like, gets real close into the camera. And he said, but he does have some stipulations. And he's going to but he won't tell them until they're in Jacksonville. And I think that they said that's the first. I believe that's when they have an episode on January 1st. So that's when he's going to make the announcement. It's probably this match is going to be booked later on, probably in February. So they're probably going to prolong this till the announcement of AEW Revolution is the pay-per-view. They announced that a little later on in the show, but this is probably going to be one of the headlining matches for that. So definitely looking forward to that. And I'm glad to see MJF how he like challenged Cody in this instead of just being like a cowardly heel and kind of like running around, and then it reaches the point where like, you know, Cody challenges him first and you almost have to wait for MJF to accept. I like how he was the one who challenged him, but he's like, oh, I have stipulations. You know, he's still playing a heel, still a little bit like, you know, like a weasel or rat, like, oh, you have to play by my rules, my stipulations. But it was good to see him challenge Cody here. So then we see Alex Reynolds. He's sitting in his hotel bed, just kind of like, you know, watching the generic channel, going to the on-demand section, you know, probably going to watch a porno because he's sad or something because he just got his ass beat in 8 seconds. But he's flipping through it, and the guy on the TV is like, oh, you know, we're here to help you and all this other stuff. So this is clearly another Dark Order commercial. And he's watching this just like generic infomercial. And then the guy's like, you know, he's like, oh, we can help you. Don't you want to stop being a loser, Alex? He's like, don't you want to quit being a jobber? And Alex is like, what? And he's like so confused, like this, like, what the, am I like hearing this correctly? So, and then he's like knocking on the screen. Not Alex, the guy in the infomercial starts knocking on the screen, and he's like, you know, join the Dark Order, then you won't be a loser. And it like flashes to Evil Uno, flashes back to this guy, and he's like, you know, kind of entranced now, and he's like, yes, you know, join the Dark Order. And then John Silver comes out, and he's like, yo, what's going on? And he's like, oh, like nothing. And then he like kind of snaps out of it. So you don't know if he's going to actually be in the Dark Order. That would be something cool, you know, just to involve these guys. Like, even though they might be job guys, like they would still be kind of have TV time and be able to get over, be involved in storylines. So another cool segment. It's really good to see these Dark Order promos. But like I said, now like we really need to start seeing them and have more in-ring action. I don't know if they're just trying to do this to like build, you know, more members besides just Stu Grayson and Evil Uno and the Creepers, build more like named members. But I would like to see like a video packages for other teams now. Then we get Big Swole versus Emi Sakura. I'm still not a fan of Emi Sakura. Big Swole, this is the first time I've really seen her in action. She's a pretty good wrestler. She's married to Cedric Alexander. This match, Sakura, she starts whipping Swole by her hair, and then a Romero special on Swole. Big Swole hits uppercuts, or big uppercuts, yeah, onto Sakura. Sakura fights back. She hits a crossbody in the corner. That's probably one of her moves that like it seems super legit is when she hits that crossbody, just because she's so like short and like stout. She's almost like built like a dwarf in like the Lord of the Rings. Like if she hits that crossbody, that actually does some damage. So she hits that crossbody in the corner, and then a tiger driver into a backbreaker. That move's also legit. And that's the thing, like Emi Sakura, she has some legit offense. My only issue with her is just her gimmick. I don't care about this Freddie Mercury gimmick. I feel like I love Queen. They're definitely one of my favorite bands. For you know, Freddie Mercury was an amazing vocalist, but there's just I feel like that gimmick just translates better in Japan. I feel like the cosplay and all that stuff is just like I have nothing against it. I'm a fan, but I just don't. It just doesn't translate well. I just I don't think people like are over, or she's over with the fans. I don't think the fans like it. They clap along with her when she claps along, but I think that's just, most of the AEW fans are just who goes to these shows. They're just marks. Like I said, they just eat it up, which, hey, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that to a certain extent, but like I said, I'm just not like sold on her yet. But then Sakura, she dances around the ring with the mic stand, and she gets swollen to a Cobra Twist, and she has like the mic stand jammed in there. And like they were saying, like, why wasn't the ref disqualifying her? Like, why does he even let her have the mic stand? at the ring in the first place. And that's like the one thing about the commentary. Like, I understand them shitting on the ref, but then at the same time, it's like you make your refs look like idiots then at the same point. Like, it should almost be like, oh, where'd you get this mic stand? Like, maybe she should have had it like down at the side of the ring and only like, a little bit like the clip where the microphone stands in sticking up. And then she could just grab that and pull it into the ring. Like, try to hide it or do something with it instead of just burying your refs and being like, oh, he should make the DQ. Like, what's he doing? But then another week, you're like, oh, it's the ref's discretion. So that's what I mean. Like, the commentary is just a little shaky. They really need to kind of like get all their ducks in a row. And it's like, this is what we're going to say for this. This is what we're going to say for that. I know they don't want to sound scripted, but then also, if you contradict yourself, you sound like an idiot. So, like I said, she has her in the Cobra Twist with the mic stand, and then Big Swole gets out of it. She hits a spear, and then a twisting Vader bomb for a 2 count onto Swole. Big boot from Swole for a 2 count, and then she hits her ripcord back elbow. Dirty Dancing, I believe they said it was called. So Big Swole hits that, and she gets the win. So like I said, this match didn't do anything crazy. I was glad to see a different woman, see Big Swole here, but Emi Sakura, like I said, her offense is okay, but I'm not sold on the character, on the gimmick. And the gimmick is what we need to be sold on for these Joshi wrestlers because they can't cut a promo, so we can't like them for who they are. I know they can do a video package and put up subtitles and stuff like that, but they don't. When have they done that? I think they might have done it with Riho and her match with Emi Sakura at a Full Gear, but I'm not even I like, don't quote me on that because I don't even remember for certain. So like we need to see video packages, put up subtitles to get these women over, because just the in-ring and their gimmicks, people aren't like, and that's the same thing. We haven't seen Riho in how many weeks? I think we saw her in tag team action like the week or two after Full Gear, and that was it. She might have wrestled once since then on AEW Dark, but like, this is a champion. Get them on TV. Get her some wins. Maybe the problem is she can't get wins, and they're like, oh, we're only going to have her do like a small package when she defends the title, but that's only going to be at big shows because we can't have her defend it, once or twice every month because she's not believable, which if that's the case, get the belt off her. I know it's not. It's just, they're booking storylines and they don't have a storyline for her, but you have a pay-per-view coming up now in February. We're, the second week now into December. So start booking a storyline for her. I know you have Chris Statlander. You're booking all these different storylines, but you're not doing anything with the champion. So that doesn't look good for your champion. Then we get Pac. He's getting interviewed, and he says he came here for an opportunity, but so far he's been given nothing. Yeah, he has some good matches, but it didn't amount to anything. And he said if he doesn't get his rubber match with Kenny Omega, that he won't be held accountable for what he does. So he wants his final match with Kenny to prove once and all who's better. And if he beats Kenny, he deserves something. So, maybe if this is the time where Moxley beats Jericho and he's the new champion, you could see Pac being the first challenger for Moxley. I could definitely see that. That could be the next big feud. Moxley screwed him over when they were tag team partners, so they already have a little bit of history going into this and, a little bit of animosity. So to me, that would be the perfect first major opponent for Jon Moxley. Then we get Kip Sabian and Shawn Spears versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. And Shawn Spears, he came out first, and he didn't have Tully Blanchard with him. So that was kind of like a head scratcher, like, oh, where's Tully? But, came in and played into the storyline later on in the match. And then to go into the match, Page takes out both men, tags in Kenny, dueling chops by both men onto Kip. And then Kenny and Hangman Page are both chopping Sabian. And then a running back breaker for a 2 count on Sabian. Hangman picks up Sabian on his shoulders and then drops him. And then he drop kicks Spears at the same time because both of the heels are in the ring. So he like drops him. He almost has him like a Samoan drop, like angle slam kind of thing. He drops him, and then he hits a drop kick on Spears, and in the same motion from that drop kick, he flips over, and he does like the moonsault onto Sabian. So that was a really cool spot. And then the heels, they start working over Hangman Page during the commercial. Kenny gets tagged in, and he starts cleaning house. Now we're getting on the huge babyface comeback. Penelope Ford, she gets on the apron to stop Kenny. And Spears and Sabian hit a backbreaker and a drop kick onto Kenny at this point. And then Penelope hits a Hurricane Rana on Hangman Page. And JR, he was getting a little sweaty looking at Penelope Ford. I mean, she is hot, but he was like, oh, yeah, I could look at her all day or something, he said. But he's starting to turn into the king there, JR. Calm down, buddy. Family-friendly show here a little bit. But and then the heels, along with Penelope, they start all beating up Kenny. The ref I don't know if the ref got taken out or if he was distracted by Hangman or what was going on. But the three of them start beating up Kenny. And then Kenny blocks a Deathly Hallows from Sabian, and he hits a huge knee. Sabian counters a Snapdragon, then Kenny hits a huge V-trigger. The lights go out at this point, and I didn't know what was going on. I almost at first thought this was like a fuck up. Like the lights legit went off and they were like, oh, what's going on? But then when they come back on, Joey Janela is at the top of the ramp and he has Tully Blanchard and he's all tied up and strapped to a chair and he's like screaming, yelling for Shawn Spears. And I actually thought this feud was over because they didn't touch on it for a little bit. And it was like, oh, maybe this was just a weird, like, we had these two guys fight. And I think Shawn Spears had the one match advantage unless it was tie. I might be wrong on that. It might actually have been tied, like 1-1. So Shawn Spears obviously runs down to help Tully Blanchard. And then Omega hits a Snapdragon suplex onto Sabian. And then he's getting, set up, getting ready for the one-winged angel or to hit another V-trigger or something. And then at this point, Hangman tags himself in. And he hits the buckshot lariat for the win. And then it was a thing where Kenny didn't really say nothing. He was like, hey, we got the win. That's kind of all that matters. But Hangman just like really looked pissed off and just like, him and Hangman, Kenny and Hangman, like they shook hands and whatever after the match. Like they were cool. But it was just one of those things where it's like maybe you see a feud between these two. I don't know if they maybe team them up again or they do something, because this would be a great first feud for like a heel Hangman Page, I think, if you're going to turn him heel, unless you kind of want to keep him just sort of like this new demeanor and this new attitude. I'm fine with that. If you want to keep him, make him, not to compare him and make it like degrade the character, but like a John Moxley Jr. where he's like tough and a badass. If you wanted to go that route, kind of like I always compared him to Stone Cold. Like, if you want to do something like that, that would be fine. So then moving on, we get Brandy Rhodes, and she calls out Riho, Britt Baker, how she says, like, all these, top women and the champion. And she actually says, like, when's the last time we've seen Riho? And she's like, then everyone's favorite, Britt Baker. And she says, but I still want you, Chris Statlander. So she still wants her on the team. And she said she's building her Nightmare Collective, and she's waiting for her alien to come home. And we see some bald guy. He's like, leaned over, and we just see the back of his head. We don't see who it is, his face. And he goes, I think, to like turn around and get up. And Brandy, like, she's like, no, not yet. She kisses his head. She's like, not yet. So now she has a new person on her team, and it's a male. So that, she's not just collecting women. I think she will as wrestlers. I mean, this guy looked pretty big, so maybe he is a wrestler, but I don't know what he's going to be. But, that's cool, though, that she's building this stable. If it is, male and female wrestlers, like, that's even cooler, I think. So now this is interesting because they had me at first, and then it was a little bit, I don't know. Is it just going to be Awesome Kong? Because Awesome Kong is not, believable in the ring to a, besides one or two moves, she's not very good. So, now that she's, collecting more people, I'm really excited to see where this is going. So then we're setting up for the Sammy Guevara and Luchasaurus match, and Jericho and Jake Hager, they come out and they kick Excalibur and Tony off the commentary desk, and they sit out with JR, and then out comes Sammy, and JR actually mentioned how much backlash that he got on, I don't know if he said on Twitter, but just how much backlash he got by comparing Sammy Guevara to Eddie Guerrero. And then, of course, Jericho was like, oh, that's stupid. He's a young Eddie Guerrero, a young Chris Jericho, a young Jake Hager, and he compared him to some other people. He's like all rolled into one. And, of course, he's going to say that to try to get his own guy over. But, I'm glad that JR acknowledged this, because, I always say, I don't know how you compare this guy to Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero was never a fucking job guy. He never just ate pins. He never looked like a loser. Like, if he, had the charisma and did what Sammy does, he would win. He wouldn't do this and then lose and look like an idiot. Unless, like the match called for, but he wouldn't be 5-0 or 6-0, 7-0, whatever the hell Sammy's record is now. He's definitely got to be, like, lower, like, it's got to be, like, Alex Reynolds, John Silver, and then him. Like, QT Marshall ranks higher than him. But, like we always say, Angel Garza's on NXT. I think they have the wrong monitor on every time Sammy comes out. Like, they must have saw the Cruiserweight Championship match. New champion, baby. We'll have that full review tonight. But, like, that's the thing. I'm just glad JR acknowledged that little point. And then we get into the match. Sammy uses his speed in the beginning. He tries to take advantage of Luchasaurus, but the power of Luchasaurus is too much. He just, he dodges him and hits him and strikes him, but as soon as Luchasaurus hits him once, Sammy's done. Huge headbutt onto Sammy, and then he slams him onto the apron. And then Sammy hits a huge DDT onto Luchasaurus. That was a pretty cool spot. Sammy tries for a moonsault, and Luchasaurus rolls away twice. And that was cool, too. Like, usually when he dodges it, then he's able to hit it, but Luchasaurus had that scouted. And then Luchasaurus hits a fury of kicks on Sammy. And then he goes to hit a choke slam, which Sammy dodges, but then he hits a tombstone facebuster for the win. So, again, this was a really short match. And, as soon as we announced it, even though he's the Spanish God and he's in the inner circle and all that, as soon as you saw this announced, you knew for the sake of this feud and everything, was Luchasaurus going to win? Yes. Was it going to be hard for him to win? No, not at all. Unless there was some fuckery with the inner circle, but we didn't see none of that. So, the match was what it was. Luchasaurus got the win, the right guy won. Sammy Guevara is still a loser, and I think that's what he'll be until he leaves the inner circle, because he's just going to be the job guy of the team. Then, after the match, the inner circle, they come down, and of course, Luchasaurus and, not Luchasaurus, obviously he was there, but Marco Stunt and Jungle Boy were there. So then, Jericho and Hager come down, so now all 6 men are in the ring. They start brawling, and at some point, Jungle Boy, I think he might have just rolled them up. But on to Jericho, Marco Stunt counts a 3. And then, of course, they're saying, oh, he got a 3 count on the champion, but it's unofficial, of course. This is 100% unofficial, but he got a 3 count on the champion. So this is just trying to, pump up and intensify for this match for next week. But it was, it was a good thing, but again, it's predictable. And, I kind of go with what Jericho said. Yeah, it might be predictable, but this is the best way to get these guys over. But now that you're saying that, it makes me think they're just fast-tracking these guys instead of the natural progression, the natural build. Now you're just trying to get these guys over immediately. Just let it be natural. You don't need this, the ratings and everything. You guys say it's a marathon, or I think that was WWE who said it's a marathon, not a race. So maybe AEW thinks it's a race. Maybe they think they gotta just grow now instead of grow, over the course of a long time. But then after this, AEW announces AEW Revolution, February 29th in Chicago. So this is the pay-per-view they announced. I'm going to be honest, I hate the name. The name, you had Full Gear, Double or Nothing, All Out. You had these really cool pay-per-view names. And you have companies like TNA and Ring of Honor. They have Bound for Glory and all these other really cool pay-per-view names. WWE's pay-per-views names are they're so shitty. Obviously, like WrestleMania, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, like those ones have the SummerSlam. They're generic and corny, but they have the nostalgia of like the 80s, early 90s. They have that nostalgia, so like that's what keeps them alive, and that's why we don't shit on them. But things like Backlash and Fastlane and all that other, and then making gimmick ones like Hell in a Cell and TLC when only like 2 matches on the show are TLC. If you're making a TLC pay-per-view, the whole thing should be TLC. If you're making a Hell in a Cell, every match should be in the cell. That might sound overdone, but then, how about you don't do the fucking pay-per-view? But anyway, back to this. AEW Revolution, I don't care for the name too much, but to me, I know the match quality will still be good, so that's not a big deal, but I think they could have came up with a little bit of a better name. And then we get to the main event, the Young Bucks versus Proud and Powerful. And this was that Texas Street Fight match. So Santana and Ortiz with Sammy, they come out and they jump the Bucks right away. Brandon Cutler, he comes out and he tries to help the Bucks, but he gets power bombed off the stage. Sammy takes a spike pile driver on the stage, so he's done. Nick Jackson hits a dive onto Ortiz, who was laid out on the table at this point. Then the Bucks and Santana both get distracted by SCU, who is sitting front row. And then now this is back in the ring. And then Santana, he gets thrown the loaded sock, and he uses it. He takes out both men. And then Proud and Powerful, they put a trash can over Nick Jackson's head. They start beating him with kendo sticks. Matt has a cowboy helmet on, so that gets a huge pop from the crowd. And they start whacking him in the head, and it doesn't do nothing. He's no selling it because he has the helmet on. He takes out both men. Then the Bucks, they get put through tables from the ring to the outside. And then we go to commercial break. During the commercial, the Young Bucks stay in control. They're beaten down, the Proud and Powerful, they stay in control, and they're beating down both of the Bucks. And then the Bucks, they start to make a comeback and take control. Nick hits a 450 onto Santana with a trash can. That was a really cool spot, even though their gimmick trash can still looks brutal. And just at this point, I just want to say how good are both these teams? Even though I was shitting on Excalibur for sucking the Young Bucks' ass, it's just both of these teams are so good. And like, you could just watch. That was a thing. Like I said, I could watch these guys wrestle all day, but you needed to do something to up the ante. This was a #1 contenders match, and it was a Texas street fight. So this is exactly what I wanted, and this match gave me exactly what I wanted until the very end. So let's get to it. So then Hager, when he hit that 450, that was clearly going to be the end of the match. It should have been. Hager, he stops the ref from, he pulls out the ref before he can make the 3 count. And then Nick goes to kick Hager, but he hits the ref instead. Then Dustin comes down and attacks Jake Hager, and they start brawling, so that just continues their storyline. A powerbomb Insiguri onto Santana, and they hit more bang for your buck. Audrey Edwards comes out at this point. I believe the crowd had up to a 9 count. And then Santana kicks out at 2 once she starts actually making her official count. And then Nick is sent through another table. Proud and Powerful beat down Matt and hit the street sweeper on him. So the match was done. That's their finisher. But Nick pulls out Audrey Edwards to stop the count. And they're like, hey, it's a no DQ. Hager did the same thing. So, it's like, hey, you can't really shit on them. It'll be like, oh, that's a heel move. Because it's like, hey, this is #1 contendership. This is, for all the chips on the table here. So they got to do what they got to do. And then, like I said, so Nick pulls her out. And then Nick gets beaten with the sock. Santana gets sent through a table. Ortiz eats 2 super kicks and then 1 through a chair. And then the Meltzer driver onto the chair for the win. And then, the super kick through the chair. They just were holding up the chair. And then he super kicked the chair into his face. And then Meltzer driver onto the chair for the win. And in my notes I put bullshit only because now SCU is clearly a face. The Young Bucks are clearly a face. And to me, the money match is the heel, proud and powerful with the belts, dropping it to the Young Bucks. I have no problem with the Young Bucks being champions. I'm not going to say, oh, you can't give them the belts because they're in the elite and they're higher up. No, that's stupid reasoning. If it's their time, it's their time. I didn't think it was SCU's time, but they're the champions, and that's fine. Those guys deserve it. They have all the talent in the world. But if you want to give it to the Young Bucks, I think it's their time right now, because they would be the first guys from the elite to be, champions. Kenny wasn't there, neither was Cody or anybody like that. So give it to the Young Bucks. Let them be the first ones, and they're arguably the most, popular. I would say even more so than Kenny, like here in the States. But I would have no problem if they beat SCU, but like I said, to me, the money match is the heel, proud and powerful against champions against the Young Bucks. But so we're getting that match, and I don't know who you go with. Like I said, to me, if you give it to the Young Bucks, I wouldn't be mad, but I think it'll be a good match either way. I don't know if there'll be some fuckery. Maybe the Inner Circle comes down and they do a three-way, triple threat match or something. I don't know what they do to get the Lucha Brothers involved. The four-way match, that would just be insane. That would probably be too much. I'm sure all four of those teams would make it not be a clusterfuck. They'd probably make it a legit good match, but I don't know what they're going to do. But then after the match, SCU, they come down and they look at the Young Bucks and they're kind of jawing back and forth. They're holding up the belts and this and that, like the friendly, banter, but they're still, in each other's face. And that's how AEW went off the air. They actually didn't end the match and immediately, go to the next program. They were able to end it. So they had the timing. The timing was really good tonight. I know that's a big thing. I'm really hard with them about how the flow and stuff seems off. Timing was really good tonight. The only thing was the commentary I thought was a little shaky, which I will say, I don't want to sound like a WWE shill, because clearly I shit on them as well, but WWE's commentary is too over-scripted and too produced, when AEW's, I think, isn't produced enough, if you know what I mean. Like, they're not that they're given like free reign, because clearly they have things they need to get over. Spanish God, Inner Circle, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page's attitude, they have things they have to get over, but they almost don't have enough. Like I said, it should be, this is what you're going to say about refs. This is what you're going to say about this. If one ref is like a shaky, shitty ref who might be a heel ref, then you get that over. Or if Audrey Edwards is the best ref and she's the most legit, she makes an even count every time, no matter who it is, you sell that agenda. You do whatever you need to do. But they don't have that kind of like direction yet, so then it makes the commentary a little shaky. But like I said, this was a solid episode of Dynamite. There was a lot of cool stuff. Like I said, the announcement for the new pay-per-view is exciting. A lot of people, all in the community, we kind of figured it would be in February. February would seem like at that point we'd, really be itching for another AEW pay-per-view. And especially it's going to, be at the end of the month. So that's going to be, we still have over 2 months away. So by that point, everybody will be salivating for this thing. And I think they're building a lot of really good matches. They're probably going to extend the Moxley. They're going to save that for the show. So you have Moxley and Jericho. You have MJF and Cody. You could do Hangman and Omega. That would be a match I would book for that. I don't think Shawn Spears and Janela will go that far. I think that feud will end, but there's tons of good feuds you could do. And I'm looking forward to it. But like I said, this episode of Dynamite did a lot of good stuff. So, thank you all as always for watching. And tonight Juan and I will be doing NXT. Friday night, of course, we'll be doing Smackdown. And like I said, Saturday, we're going to have a lot of stuff coming. We're going to have previews and predictions for TLC. And we're going to hopefully be able to do NWA Into the Fire. We're still going to look into that and try to get that streaming. So we'll have that show review for you as well. Their first pay-per-view, I'm really excited for that. Tons of great matches on there. We won't be doing previews and predictions for that, but we'll definitely do the review if we can get a hold of that. And then Sunday, obviously, we're going to have TLC review as soon as the pay-per-view is over for you guys. So, of course, thank you all so much for watching. And, of course, we have all the social media links listed down below in the video description. Links to our past recent videos. And thank you all so much for the support, subscribing, the likes. We just, love the fan interaction, especially on Facebook. We get a ton of comments and interaction there. Love if you guys will comment on YouTube and all that as well. So thank you so much. And as always, Adaaaaaaa.